All right, welcome back, you guys. Gosh, we are just farther and farther and farther into the Nancy Guthrie investigation and her disappearance, and it feels like sometimes we're no closer to actually getting where we need to go, which is somebody being held accountable for this and Nancy Guthrie being found. But we did learn several new things this week. I want to start with things that we actually learned today. So Savannah actually went back to New York. She was at the Today Show today, in studio with her coworkers, with her friends, giving them hugs, thanking them, praying together. So we know she has now left Tucson to go back, and she plans to return to the Today Show. They didn't give a time on that, but that is her plan from there. So on the personal side of things, Savannah trying to go back to a place that she also loves and really a second family to her, which is the Today Show and NBC family. Meanwhile, what else did we learn this week? The DNA on the pair of gloves that was found on the side of the road about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home. And that's a place, I saw the area that it was just like right off one of the main drags. That DNA came back as a match to a nearby restaurant worker. And that person is not considered to be part of the investigation, according to authorities. What does that mean? That means that that person is not considered to be a person of interest, to be a suspect, none of that. And so that's important when you're talking about, is that glove related or not? No, it doesn't seem like it is. And I know a lot of people were hoping that there was going to be some answers. There's also been a lot of other gloves found in the area that were part of the investigation. We're going to get into that in a second as well. But as far as other new tidbits of information, we also know the FBI's Violent Crime Task Force was back out at Nancy Guthrie's home and neighborhood today. They were talking to different neighbors as the investigation is ongoing. But again, we still don't know where Nancy is. We still don't know the legitimacy of the ransom notes, even the first 2 that came into the news stations and TMZ that had those deadlines on them. We still don't know if those are credible or not. There's been alleged other notes that have come in. We just don't know and don't have any more answers on that. We do know that mixed DNA from inside Nancy Guthrie's home is still being tested in a lab that has not come back yet. And so we're still waiting on that. One question that people had was, did the DNA from the glove, was that linked to the restaurant worker through genetic genealogy? I asked PCSD that yesterday because it was confusing. They were doing all sorts of different testing. And as you recall, the reason that they were doing genetic genealogy testing on the gloves was because they told us that it didn't come back to a hit in CODIS, which is the FBI's database. So when I asked them that, and for clarification, was that genetic genealogy? Was that another, private lab or something different database? They just said they wouldn't provide additional details. So we still don't know. We can assume, though, it's not through CODIS, so it would have either been genetic genealogy or another database. So the investigation, of course, is ongoing. And we have new interview sound from Pima County Sheriff Nanos. So he knows he has been under a lot of scrutiny throughout this investigation for the handling of this, the handling of the scene, the handling of the media, what he is or isn't saying. And so he was asked about some of that today with our sister station. We work together with them. He says lots of valuable evidence is still being analyzed, both digital and DNA evidence. But one thing that was highly contested was the video of the abductor, that surveillance video. And we were talking about this the other week. There were sources that had come out to multiple media outlets, including our own, that said one of the pictures that shows the masked individual, the masked man with no backpack, and it looks like different lighting, was actually from a different day than the abductor video where he's knocking, he's putting the plants up on the door, and then that camera is disabled. Sources have said those were from 2 different days. We also know that PCSD has been asking neighbors for surveillance video starting from the first of the month. So Sheriff Nanos was asked about that because they have said that there's no timestamps on the video to prove that. The confusion there was that when this investigation began and they had their first and only press conference, they had timestamps in that timeline that said exactly when somebody was detected on the camera, when that camera was disabled, and then when Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker detached or disconnected from her phone. So there had to be timestamps at some point. Nanos was asked about that today and whether or not there is a timestamp on that picture that is from an alleged different day, which would suggest that the abductor had been at Nancy Guthrie's home before. Here's what he said about it.
Was there a timestamp at some point in time? Could have been. But that image they gave us doesn't have that. What I tell people is this: they say, "Well, of course it's 2 different days. Look at the lighting, or look at the different attire he's in, or whatever." I look at that video and go, I have no way of knowing that that's 2 different days. I understand someone might assume that, someone might speculate that, but we don't work on assumptions or speculation. We work on evidence. And the evidence in front of us tells us you have a man dressed in this attire in one image, and you have him dressed this way in another image. There is no way to, with certainty, say this is a different day. Somebody might be able to speculate that, but again, evidence takes us there, not speculation.
Now let's talk about the gloves in the case, because Sheriff Nanos is asked about this. So we know that the DNA on this black glove, this pair of black gloves on the side of the road, ruled out for the restaurant worker. But there has been conversation about there being multiple gloves found in this investigation. Are they related? Are they not? Sheriff Nanos is asked about it, and here's what he says.
There's stories out there that, oh, it's from the search teams and the deputies were just throwing their gloves everywhere. Well, that is so far from the truth. That's just bunk. We know that our search and rescue team last night, they were out last night. Go tell me you find gloves laying around. That's not how they work. They're very well trained. They're very well experienced. And to be honest with you, every glove we've issued in this department to all of our search and rescues and our department members for decades, they're blue. They're not black. Just those are silly things that people make statements of, and then they just grow.
Here's the problem with that soundbite that Sheriff Nanos just said. He said this wouldn't be from any deputies, anything like that. The problem is that on February 16th, PCSD put out an update, and they point to a statement being released by the FBI in conjunction with them. And in that PCSD email, it says, quote, investigators collected approximately 16 gloves in various areas near the house. Most of them were searchers' gloves that they discarded in various areas when they searched the vicinity. The searchers, the investigators, this is why this is so confusing. Now, that was something that the FBI put out that PCSD agreed with, but in the end, there were official on-the-record statements being made that the searchers in this investigation and the investigators found gloves discarded during that time. So, yeah, this is where people are really confused about what gloves belong to who and where they were found. Are they being tested in the investigation or are they not? That comment is very confusing to a lot of people for that reason. Sheriff Nanos also addressed some other things. And as we're going to get into my analysis of the Luke Daley interview and the Mary Daley interview, he was asked if Luke Daley and Carlos, who was also detained and released, the DoorDash driver that was since, investigated, are these 2 men cleared? The only people before today that Sheriff Nanos has said are cleared are the Guthrie siblings and their spouses in the Guthrie family as suspects or potential suspects in this case. So are Luke Daley and Carlos cleared? Here's what he said.
What I will say is we had what we believed to be probable cause to take action against both those individuals and the residence they occupied. That probable cause that we felt was strong was given to the U.S. attorney, the county attorney, and a magistrate, a judge. And they agreed that, yes, here's a warrant, go perform your duties. That court order, that warrant, in both cases was served, and we got what we got from it, and we're moving on.
We're moving on. So he didn't say, yes, they are cleared, or no, they are not, but simply, we are moving on. So you can kind of take from that what you will. Nanos went on to say after that soundbite that there have been no other search warrants served that he is aware of any other persons of interest in this case so far. As far as persons of interest go, they obviously have search warrants digitally and all things like that. But as far as potential persons of interest, potential people in this case, there have been no other search warrants served. Let's talk about my interviews with Luke and Mary Daley earlier this week down in Tucson. I'm monitoring some of the comments here on my computer as we go. And I'm so happy that you guys are commenting and asking questions. Please ask me more. One thing that I just saw was, what were the conditions of my interviews with Luke and Mary? Was there a time limit? Were there certain questions, etc.? The answer to that is no, and I'll give you a little bit of behind the scenes. I had been working with the attorney in this case. This is a well-known attorney in Arizona. We've actually worked with him on other cases. He is the one representing Luke and Mary. We came in, we put up our whole setup, and we did our interview one by one. Luke first, Mary second. I made a list of questions that I wanted to ask. His attorney was in there and could step in if he needed to or wanted to, and that is very standard when we do interviews with either alleged criminals, alleged suspects, people detained and released. Typically, an attorney is in there with us, and they can choose if they want to step in or not. But I knew I was going one by one, and there was also one other media outlet, a national media outlet that was doing interviews as well, that was also there. So basically, I asked all the questions I wanted to, but I was still very respectful of the time and of the fact that Luke and Mary, no matter what you think, they are not being charged with any crime in this case as of now, which means from my standpoint as a journalist and as an interviewer, I treat them as such. Some of you may have seen my interviews with Lori Vallow-Daybell, a convicted child killer who was convicted by the time I interviewed her. You might have also seen my interview with the man who is facing charges for allegedly crucifying a pastor here in Arizona and confessing to it. To me, those two interviews, sit down, very serious in a crime case, are different than the interviews I did with the Daleys because they're not charged with anything. They were detained and released. And so, yes, did I have questions about where they were, what they were doing, what those detainments were like? Absolutely. But are these two different people than the convicted criminals or confessed criminals that I have interviewed? Absolutely. And the respect on my end as an interviewer must come from being direct and professional with them, but respectful of the fact that they are not facing any charges. So that's a little bit about my mindset when I'm interviewing them, what that looks like from my end. The main thing I wanted to ask Luke Daley was, hey, a lot of people believe you look like and are the guy that is the abductor in the Nancy Guthrie video. So one of the questions I started with, here's what he said.
Many people have believed that you are the person on the surveillance video, the abductor, the masked person. Is that you?
It's not me. I don't see the resemblance of it looking like me, but absolutely not. I have nothing to do with this case.
Nothing to do with it. Do you have any idea who is involved in the abduction?
I don't. If I did, I would happily tell FBI, police, anything. I mean, I, like everyone else, just want Nancy to come home and be safe. But that being said, I have nothing to do with this case, and that's it.
So he says that is not him unequivocally in the video, no matter what people say. So then I wanted to ask him, well, how did this all unfold that Friday night when you guys were detained? He said that two sheriff's vehicles were what started out as following him driving home. He said he was then pulled over by that Culver's, and you can see the video of that Range Rover search. We have some of that in our system. But he said as he was driving home, then he was pulled over. He said he was asked to get out of his car, but they didn't say what they were actually doing. Here you go. You can see the FBI agents here. That's his Range Rover, the gray silver Range Rover there. They asked him to get out. They put him in the back of a car while they searched and processed that Range Rover outside the Culver's. But he says this is when things were at least relatively confusing to him as to why he was being questioned. Take a listen to what he had to say.
Near anywhere or have any connection to this. The whole time while I'm sitting in the back of the cop car, I'm like panicking, thinking that I'm going to be framed for this or they're trying to pin this on me somehow.
Did they tell you what led them to you? I mean, something made them believe they needed to talk to you about it. What was that?
I asked them. They didn't tell me any information about that. And I have thought of any type of reason why they could have come after me. But there's nothing, and I think that's why they didn't tell me.
Were you in the area of the home at the time, like the overnight, or would it have been something like, we've tracked this person near the abduction scene?
I live near her house, but I mean, I didn't even know that until after the fact. Like, I barely just learned where her actual house was, and in relation to mine.
Okay, and so some people have said that they thought it was confusing that he told me that once a lot more FBI agents showed up that he was like, oh, this must be for Nancy. And a lot of people were like, well, why would he just assume that was for Nancy, especially because he does have a criminal past with drugs? To that, I would say, at least from my standpoint, it was odd that there'd be so many sheriff's deputies and FBI agents surrounding him, and his mom was paying attention to the case. She had talked to him about it, and so it's possible that because he saw there were so many FBI agents also coming out that he assumed that it was about Nancy Guthrie. But some people have questioned why he just assumed that that would be about Nancy as opposed to any other crime case in the area. But, you know, again, is there typically FBI at a crime, at a possible just traffic stop in Tucson? No, not typically. So he is detained with his Range Rover at the Culvers. Meanwhile, at his home, you have this operation that was going on, another SWAT operation, but this time his mom, Mary, was detained, and she thought that they were actually coming to the house just to see what she might have information-wise in the case, but she says that is when she's taken out, put in the back of a cop car, and she has no idea what's going on. Listen to what she had to say.
They were there for about 6 hours, and I was in the SWAT vehicle, and they went through my house and went through everything and tore everything, broke my... If the door was locked, they would break it open to go see what was in there. There really wasn't anything in there, but, you know, it was pretty upsetting.
Well, and it's one thing to come to you and say, do you have any video or anything like that? It's another to detain you and search your house with a search warrant. Did they tell you why?
I guess I assumed, you know, because I lived close by or something, but I just said I'd do anything to, if we could find some clues that might help, but I don't think there's going to be anything in here, but go ahead and look.
So when they detained you, did you know that this was related to also them investigating Luke?
No.
You had no idea?
No, I wasn't thinking this was about Luke. You know, I found out it was also about Luke, but initially, no, I was thinking it was all about Nancy Guthrie and finding her and whatnot. So, because I was thinking, I don't even think Luke probably ever watched the news and even saw Savannah on the news. I mean, I did.
Right. So when did you learn that, you know, your detainment was related to Luke's detainment in this case?
When? I'm not exactly sure when, because honestly, during this time, I was really emotional, and there were lots of information coming in, and so I don't remember exactly the time, but I know that in retrospect, I know all this stuff that it did, but initially I didn't think of it being Luke as part of this, because I knew it wasn't something that Luke would be involved in any way, and he wasn't. So, yeah.
And when you learned that, was there any thought that could he have been involved?
No, I didn't think he ever could have been involved.
And Mary stands by that. She absolutely does not believe Luke was involved at all. So where does it stand with the Daleys? Well, Luke said that he has received the Range Rover back. He has his car back. So that can lead us to assume and believe that car was completely processed. They don't need it anymore in the investigation. They've given it back. But the Daley family has dealt with immense online speculation and comments, even after this interview. I mean, I posted these interviews in full, posted clips from them, and even in the face of them being detained and released, obviously the sheriff now saying they're moving on from the people who were detained, at least in some capacity, whatever that means. There's still many people that believe that Luke is involved, and that's really hard for a family who isn't facing any charges but has to live in public right now while this is all going on. So Luke talks about the fact that he's having a hard time because he doesn't even know really what led them to him, but also people are, you know, suspicious of him out and about to where he feels like he can't even function in public.
Online, it just seems like they're pushing this narrative and trying to make connections with things that are, I don't know, basically like circumstantial, like saying my eyelashes match the guy in the ski mask picture, which I'm sure like if you could use anyone's picture and find similarities.
And you don't recognize the person on that, in that footage?
No, I don't. But in terms of all this, like I said, they're comparing my face to this. They're talking about my Range Rover, which I didn't even buy until after she was reported missing.
It was a new car, yeah?
Yeah.
For you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're talking about another car that was towed off my property. That car wasn't an accident, has nothing to do with this. It wasn't towed in relation to this case. It was being towed by the insurance company to assume if it was totaled or not. So that had nothing to do with the case. There's no evidence to point towards me other than speculation.
You really have no idea what led them to you in this case?
Absolutely not.
Still a mystery to you?
Yes, and I would love to find out.
Now, his attorney says they have not seen the sealed federal search warrant. His attorney has also said that they will possibly pursue legal action against what happened to the Daleys in this case. Now, I do want to show you guys some behind-the-scenes footage that we shot of the interview. This is not something I would typically do, but I posted this on social media. We had shot some behind-the-scenes footage as we were just preparing for the interview. I want to take this full, Jason, if you can, just to show the full aspect here. The reason why I showed this was people wanted to see what he looked like walking in, what he looked like, what he was wearing, any sort of, body jewelry, markings, etc. And, I wouldn't normally post something like this, but people were curious and we don't have anything to hide from the video that we have here as we were getting ready. So this is what Luke looked like when he came in. He was very respectful of us, again, not facing any charges, but people have wanted to see this raw stuff, this raw footage so much just to kind of see what he looked like, what, trying to kind of see, oh my gosh, well, could he walk like the person that's on the video? And again, I just want to say that he has been detained and released in this case. He is not facing any charges as of now. And so you can at least see what he's wearing. There's been a lot of people who have commented and been kind of suspicious of the fact that he was wearing long sleeves and warm clothes. Meanwhile, people have commented I had on a sleeveless dress. Look, for me, it was 90 degrees in Arizona on Monday. I was hot and that's how I function and I wear clothes like that. I don't know what Luke wants to wear or what he typically wears. Maybe he felt this was the best outfit or clothing he had for an interview, a sit-down interview. I have no idea, but you can see at least here, we wanted to pull back the layer and show you, look, here's what we have. You can look at this video. I know people will make their own opinions and assumptions, but again, Luke Daley, as of now, is not facing any charges in this investigation. There have been no other search warrants served, according to Sheriff Chris Nanos today. But as it goes for Luke Daley and Carlos, who were detained, as well as Mary, Sheriff Nanos says they are moving on.